The name is Byron Miller. I work for Luminex, which is a biotech company out in Austin. And we use Puppet for our configuration management, Puppet for our deployment, provisioning, the whole 9 yards. This is just a disclaimer of what I do. I'm kind of a little bit different. A lot of people probably come from cloud shops or different enterprise places where you're running Amazon, things like that. I'm actually database administrator by trade, but working with VMware and Linux, running a few hundred hosts at this biotech. And so a lot of what I do is run Oracle databases, Oracle Enterprise Linux, Puppet, VMware, and those kind of tools. And as I started working on this talk, I kept on thinking of, there's going to be lots of other talks here of the technology that's used, so I didn't want to focus much on repeating slides of, hey, this is a manifest, this is how you can change things. I wanted to talk about how I was able to use Puppet to achieve some cool business goals, and also reshare some ideas that I shared at DevOps Days about how to do some leadership things and lead from a technological aspect, and it might be beneficial to some of you guys. Enterprise, this is my enterprise, Oracle, Linux, Windows, WebLogic, running Oracle Financials, VMware, lots of COTS. We don't have much in the cloud. We do use Salesforce, but that we actually integrate through SOA Gateway, which I'd rather do it other ways. But the enterprise to a lot of people can be different things. I mean, it's not a very defined term. I know people that are, say they're an enterprise shop, they got everything running on Azure or Rackspace or any of those kind of facilities. But we run everything internal. All of our stuff is on Oracle Linux and VMware. And with Puppet, the big area they should scale, bowl is what other places would call it. I try not to use it. The one thing that I always see, and one way I always show our success, was starting out simple. I know a lot of people jump in, they have grand ideas of trying to do Puppet for everything. I want to Puppetize our whole pipeline, our whole product, and they try and attempt to grand scale out the door instead of starting small and actually just get Puppet running, managing your sysctl or NTP and little things like that. Could be big wins. We had a problem with database time drift and things like that they tried fixing by just going in and manually logging into 150 servers and trying out different things. So we were able to use Puppet to easily fix this, and this is where we run Augias. I mean, I saw the demo of that, and I can't speak to that enough. And then we source control everything. I mean, that's the most important thing coming from a system inside and a database administrator. Put everything in, we use GitLab, everything goes into source control, and it's just important. And it gets you on the same page as developers, so when you're trying to bring developers into your projects, just being able to speak the same language has been great. And how do you achieve your goals? Implementing Puppet. One thing that I just want to repeat, has been repeated to me by people that I talk to all the time, Kevin Baer, Jim Kim, those kind of guys. I've been working on several projects with them, and these are kind of things that aren't technological reasons of how you achieve the Puppet goal, but they're probably the most important. I mean, I did some of them up there a few times, iterate. When you do automation, the end goal isn't that you have something automated and you move on and forget about it. The end goal is actually to iterate and improve it and show that you're working towards goals, some kind of system goal or some kind of product goal or value add goal, that you're actually working on work that brings value to the business. And a lot of people don't necessarily think of this, out the door when you're thinking of running Puppets. But, pilot programs, that's probably the best thing. I work at a place where people didn't know configuration management, they didn't understand it, didn't see the value of it. So we set up a pilot program where we actually brought it in and took clones of our servers that cause the most difficulty or processes that cause the most difficulty. We ran a pilot where we actually cloned off our financials, used Puppet Apply to do the rapid clone stuff that Oracle has, and we also deploy the Oracle Cloud Control agents and things like that. So when they saw that we took all this manual work, we had a checklist a mile long, those pilots instantly went over the work. And then the nice thing about pilots is we were able to go into production with the pilots without having to do formal projects, so there was no cost, which can be a huge thing in your organization if you can save things in, as pilot programs. speak of anything that has labor or costs, you know, you can be dead out the door unless you have corporate sponsorship. And this is where, you know, I find great value in pilots and testing. And then when you're rolling out Puppet, some of the best advice isn't to just roll it out and try things. It's to actually kind of write down the goals of why you're using it, write down the context of the goals, because the context will help you drive how you manage your deployment, what kind of sponsorship you need from people. In a corporate environment, I don't have a say over much of what I actually support. I have business analysts that support the financial applications that I have to have approval on. I have auditors. You know, the silos are there regardless of whether I want them there. So, you know, setting down the value, and setting down what we're trying to deploy as a service and the utility. You know, that's how I got the wins for corporate sponsorship. And I actually talk about this a little bit later, and you know, the part of the collaboration and how you can use this to do your public deployments and rollouts. And then this is just reiteration. Most of the problems I've had with Puppet haven't been technology. I mean, Puppet 3.0 when it first came out was kind of a pain to get up and running, to be honest. But once we got it up and running, we started getting these tactical wins and easy solutions in place and working on small iterative projects. Then we started getting the business more in an iterative, continuous improvement cycle and actually working on resolving our pipeline. Our project pipeline is huge. I mean, we probably have 150 projects that they expect IT to finish in the next year or two. And without Puppet, without the tools that we have, you know, it's not going to happen. And Puppet has enabled us to get visibility for infrastructure where people just assumed it just took 80 days or 80 hours to do something. And we have the capacity now to show it's much shorter than that. You know, when it comes to establishing goals, configuration drift is an easy one. And this is your basic. You install Puppet, you have the agent running on the server that's doing reporting. You have the reporting that shows if there's any drift. If people are making changes outside of Puppet, easy to track. And then with the IGS provider now letting access to see resources, you can see what's changes and changed now and pull that stuff back in. So I use the Foreman. I love it. I use that as our EMC. I use it as a dashboard. We use the parameterized classes in it a lot. We're using the resource groups that are built into it. And it's been nice because it gives something for people that I interface with, a dashboard, a graphical interface to get in and actually see their systems deployed, and they can actually deploy things. We use the Foreman, and here's just kind of a snapshot of the dashboard of what's in sync, what's out of sync. Some of it we're just waiting to retire hosts. This is just a small part of our infrastructure, but it just gives you a simple dashboard where you can go and click through everything. This is our host groups. So we use host groups to actually assign different servers to, and the host groups you can test them and things. It's not really the most elegant solution, but the Foreman makes it visually easy for people to see which configuration is applied to which one of their hosts. And they can make recommendations. Like they know there's a package that we have that they can go in here and assign the package to it, or have escalated up to someone in our ticketing system to assign it and make their own Puppet, and then they get the report. Super simple. This goes into the reporting. This is another easy goal. When you're trying to sell people on Puppet, a lot of times you might go in saying, you know, we can automate, check out code, we can automate our databases and SQL Server and your Apache LAMP stack, things like that. You try and often take on huge goals. So I always recommend starting out simple, keep it simple, get things up and running, get the business using what you have as their foundation pieces. And then once again, the Foreman exposes your common reports. You can drill down and you can see things. So you have a couple of failed posts here. Our auditors actually use this with their clients. They used to come and schedule 10, 20 hours of meetings with all of us to ask us what change did this or what ticket. We actually bring some of that integrated in from Salesforce with this, so the auditors can just log in with their account and view the reports and see that the change that we said we were doing is in there, and, which is a lifesaver. I got kind of sick of those meetings every 6 months. This is just an output of a summary report from the foreman. The foreman has really nice report metric widgets. You can do the base stuff that comes with Puppet, but you can also extend it with the trends. You have a nice trend dashboard, so it shows you your upgrades over time, your system, your OS levels, and anything that comes from Factor, anything that comes from a resource or Puppet DB, you can do trending in the dashboard. That's real nice and simple. And then provisioning. This is another, I mean, a lot of people are doing this just with the cloud provider tools they have. But in enterprise, it used to be, we'd spend 2 weeks, or they say we'd spend 2 weeks building up a host. Most of the time, it's just sitting there watching a screen scroll by after you kickstarted it. But provisioning inside the foreman is super simple. It actually supports Google Compute, Amazon, Azure, has good providers for VMware, and then it runs on fog. So if you've ever ran fog for your underlying layer infrastructure, it's all built on that, so you can extend and embrace it pretty quickly. We use it also for some of our Hyper-V stuff. We sell lab equipment, and we started having our developers test the lab equipment software on their workstations or on a VM versus having to have a $30,000 lab system sitting around for them. So setting them up through the Foreman and Puppet to deploy the lab environment, deploy your application on it, and using the Chocolatey, which our lab equipment is based on Windows. Chocolatey is like a package manager like RPMs for Windows, and it allows us to really kickstart what the developers were doing before. That used to be a long and tedious and expensive process to have hardware rolling around and trying to convince them to virtualize the hardware around the actual hardware, so you don't have to worry about BIOS revisions and stuff. But provisioning has been an easy goal, and when the business saw that we were able to provision anywhere and everywhere, they saw tremendous value in it. We have rogue IT. We have people that go to Amazon and run compute stuff there. We're able to bring them in and track their Amazon stuff through the Foreman and provision new hosts that way, so that we kept purchasing from complaining that all these departments were going out and buying stuff, and they hate residual payments. They would rather have contracts than purchases. But it was an easy win that I can't recommend enough. You start with the simple stuff and then work up to the complex stuff once you have these in place. And your Puppet rollout is just infinitely better and more respected in the business, I think. The simple provisioning stuff, you can specify your environment here, you can specify the Puppet master, the host group, and you can do bare metal provisioning. They don't use Razor, this uses the Foreman's version of it, but there's also a command line API that gives you full access. You don't have to use the dashboards if you want. And the command line API, I find is even better. Like you did Google Compute, you can put the complex stuff in with your API keys and save that in, and then use the simple command line tools to send out stuff to Google Compute, which I find is a lifesaver just because I'm not a fan of how they roll out their stuff. The hard goal is automating everything else. If you've got AGIS and you're doing your system configs, you're doing your provisioning and your bare metal OS, and you have the headache of configuration drift out of the way, then this is where you kick into some of the fun stuff and the difficult stuff. But I wouldn't recommend doing this out the door and skipping the easy stuff, saying that it's easy. You just never get around to it. Some people just call it technical debt. Some people are just, we're not having much drift problems, so we're not going to track it. But I think you lose the value proposition that the business sees. So I recommend all the other stuff is secondary to just getting it out the door, having it set up, having it recording, and running away with it. And then, when it comes to the big things, a lot of us, especially me, I like to go in and dig in and do the technical work. So I often skip out on all this stuff because I just, that's the way I'd rather get in and get my hands dirty and do stuff. But I found I didn't get any support. People were kind of questioning the value. When it comes to working with Puppet in the enterprise, there's a lot of politics, I guess you could say, involved, trying to get things done and who you can win over. And once I started studying these things and talking to people about them. The most important thing for me was flow. We have this huge ERP system, and we do changes to it. I have 200 people that are committed to validating that change in one fashion or another, whether it's our business analysts, it's functional people, people on the floor. We run a huge supply chain management, MRP, billing, AR, APGL, the whole gamut. So we changed from having a dozen to 24 dev environments and disparate versioning of everything between them into working on a single flow. And once we did the single flow, then we were able to take from that flow and describe things that we could automate. If there's a patch that's provided by Oracle, to us that's a lower risk than custom development work or other things because Oracle will support it. So when we can now have developers attach the patch to an SR, which is a service request, and then our QA environment will actually go and pull down that patch and apply it and upload the application log to the server, and we run it all through Puppet. It's kind of a strange way to do it. We used to use Mercury Interactive, but they wanted like $3 million to do what we could do with Puppet, so just kind of took that route. But doing the flow, kind of benchmarking it, even if you're in an idle shop or whatever kind of process you have, describing that before you get started is a huge thing. And what we did is we took our notes and our documentation and actually put it in the manifest. It's kind of like a description of what is actually being achieved, and then we run the hard doc on it, and that's how published. The foreman will rake all that together and kind of generate a system 1D for us. So all of that is included. So when people ask, why did we do this? If they followed our general guidelines on why we did it, it's all in there. The foreman exposes that really nicely. And I'm not sure if the Puppet dashboard does that or not. But, another thing is to think of your complexity and context. And context is important, and I'll show here in a little bit. We're going to talk about how you actually get things done. And that's sense making. This is something that someone had taught me, and I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. Why I'm a big nerd. I mess around with Linux. I code stuff, and why would I be bothered with this? But this is something that helps make sense of the demand that I was trying to solve with Puppet. It helped make sense of not only the demand, but who to best handle it, what was best at being automated just out the door, and what we shouldn't even automate because it just doesn't fit. This is actually an Evan diagram. A guy that's recently done it. Has done this more on the business side, but there's a lot of people trying to bring this into IT. Kevin Bear may have spoken about it if you've seen him at DevOps Days Pittsburgh or anything like that. But it's a diagram. We'll explore a little more here. And it has a complex realm, which the main objective of the complex realm is that when you operate in this and when you have a complex situation or complex environment, the way you respond and the way you plan to respond to develop solutions in this environment is you do what they call in your probe, sense, and respond. And complex is an area where most people think of innovative solutions. You're coming up with things that are kind of new, unique to your business, unique to what you do, unique to your product. And this is, you sense emergent practices. This is oh hell yeah, this is cool. Let's do this. This will bring value to our business. And then I have a note of the type of leadership that you see here is collaborative leadership. This isn't the type of work that you want your ex-military boss coming in and telling you what to do because there's an easy plan and stuff. This is one where you have to operate with experts that are giving you data and influence and interpreting things. And the whole part of all these quadrants that we'll go through is that you continue to improve things in these and then how things can shift between the three. And it is kind of a pretty cool thing that once you start thinking about your work and how you apply your knowledge to getting it done or where you should apply your knowledge to getting it done, it just makes things can pop out at you. In your complex realm, it's probably not best to automate things. A lot of people say you build realms. This is where you build your foundation. So you remove risk by having your standards and your compliance systems, and you do your best to have rails that make sure you're kind of to your best of knowledge on a good path, and then you're giving people tools they need to have agility to get things done. Probably not your best area. If there's something complex, you're using retrospective to try and figure out what went wrong or what you need to do. It's not something you can forecast and plan for, so I wouldn't try and automate entirely complex systems out the door. Complicated is the one to the right of complex, and it's a little more simple where you sense, analyze, and respond. This one, you're not reacting as much. You're applying good practice. There's things you can automate here. This would be, our Oracle stuff was complex before. There was no way around working with Oracle. It's odd ways of cloning, environment creation, and patching. But once we worked with Oracle and did some retooling and used cloud control, I don't know if any of you heard Oracle shops, but once we retooled and brought over our knowledge into that complicated thing where we have our DBA teams involved, we were able to automate things and build on good practices. And this one, analytical leadership is your best. This is where people are thinking of different problems, solutions. You want your thinkers working in a complicated domain. And this is where a lot of IT sits, actually. You're chaotic, that's where you don't want to be. Chaotic is an interesting one, as shit's hitting the fan, basically. Every solution is a novel solution. You don't want to work on pelletizing what you do here. This is where you sense, act, and respond, or act, sense, and respond. Whatever happens when you have a novel or chaotic process is not just worth throwing a puppet of any sorts. Your job is to get it out of here and hopefully move it to complicated or complex, depending on the environment. Simple, that's where bureaucracy lives. Simple is highly automatable. There's the easy goals. This is where you want things that you can repeat. This is where you create processes you can share and hand down to people. There's nothing, run book type stuff where you can hire people in and push buttons, or you can just live and just report. But there's the quirk, and I'm not sure you can see it here, but on simple down there, it's got a little squiggly going to chaotic, and that's kind of the symbolism of when stuff blows up in the simple, it doesn't go into complicated or complex, it goes into chaotic. You got your managers chewing on your, what stuff's down, stuff's broken, and that's usually a symptom of not paying attention to the simple things because we think they're simple and we've applied best practice. But that's where, automation is never done. You just keep on iterating, and that's I can't say it enough that you get something in place, you get it working, and you show improvement. You show the business that you're improving the processes, and some of it, if you're editing your sysctl or resolve that company, you don't have to iterate over all that. But what you do is you iterate over those foundations, include more applications, work with your vendors, bring them in, and make sure you have the right people with the right idea of how to manage those projects. And I found this to be completely invaluable in making sure that we were going down the right decision-making processes for how we would handle different environments that we were bringing in. And disorder is simply the area in the middle that you start. Disorder is just where you haven't thought about the process, you haven't thought how you can apply tools to achieve it. You got biases of how you want to do it. You haven't really thought things through, so you don't know whether it's complex or not. So this is where we start. This is where a lot of people, unfortunately, sit when they don't think about their work. And you can be automating away, Puppet or whatever you want, but still in disorder just because you haven't brought up everyone and everything into an encompassing mindset of what you're trying to achieve with these tools. It just goes into reiterating here that think about your work, the tools, the systems, and the goal. You probably heard people talking about the goal in different books. Think about the value that you're bringing, and then was an eye-opener for me thinking of the Venn diagram and thinking about appropriate leadership, because I've had projects that were in these different domains that, looking back on them in history, they've failed miserably just because we never thought about the type of leadership that was good for the type of role that we're, or the type of work that we're trying to achieve. And it was, a huge eye-opener to have these kind of discussions, and it makes for great discussions. And you're, if you're having a meeting after something's crashed and you're trying to figure out what went wrong, don't just talk about what the engineer screwed up or what processes broke. Talk about how you can fix it and what kind of domain of knowledge that process is in, and it'll bring up some interesting discussions. And I find that just a great way to get things done. And with automation, sometimes the best tool is humans. Software is great at repetition. It's not great at figuring out complex things for you. Sometimes you make things overly complex by trying to automate the whole thing. If you got variance, if you're trying to trick the system to do things you shouldn't do, if you're trying to do overly complex things, or you're living in a chaotic or that type of domain, you need people in there that can think and who are respected for being able to think and solve it, and who not everything can be solved with Puppet or any CM tool. And this just goes along. We use the Foreman, we use M Collective. We don't run anything automated daemon mode or anything like that. All of our systems are in reporting facts to M Collective. So if we have a database patch, we can roll it out by using no patch from M Collective just to the database servers that we choose or select. We have reporting that runs every night just to pull back reporting for auditing sake. But we found that instead of trying to work on scaling up and trying to handle an infinitely large load, that we don't have much drift from people logging in and making changes, and we don't have many ephemeral instances. We kind of have lots of pets, no cattle, to use that analogy. So for us, M Collective, and being able to actually explicitly state which realms and which services we want to update and orchestrate that has been a great thing to alleviate the pain points. Some more easy wins. System cloning. If you're in an enterprise IT shop, you probably have people that when they send a project to you, they figure 2 to 3 weeks to clone off a database or do some kind of work that is very easily done in Puppet. And I've come to realize that unless you communicate that it is automated and that you brought those people into these tools, that they go and forecast out that you have 8 hours of work to do whatever it is they want to do, and then your boss won't let you work on your own projects because you're forecasted it out for the whole month. So I find, to iterate on the easy wins and to get things done, to communicate that you can do things more repetitively with better control and better tracking, it's just been a good thing. And it's funny how the business, some people will refuse to change and they'll continually book you for 80 hours to do something that's an hour of watching logs on the screen. And collaborate. Collaboration, this is kind of just going in, leading into something I talked about at DevOps Days in Austin, but collaboration from IT, especially from people who are running Puppet, where you can impact everything, an entire organization with a Puppet run, has been huge. And it's one thing where, growing up, I told people I collaborated all the time, that I worked with them, that I could, hey, I'm working with my peers and they know me and they trust me, and that's as far as I went with collaboration. And started studying it, reading some books, working with a professor at a university. He doesn't want me using his name because he's got books he's working on, but he was kind of like a mentor of sorts to help me step out of the box of being, the print that was in this book that probably most of you read or heard of. And in this book, it was written about me. I was a friend. I was the guy that could get stuff done, but I had just a mile of people waiting to get things done, so it didn't look like I was getting getting my things in order, very disorganized, but hey, I was working with everybody, thought I was collaborating, but got me thinking that, as I'm up here giving you advice, what if Eric in this book had given me the same advice? I'm the guy who's nose down, working on a computer, getting things done. Would I listen to it? Would I care? Some people don't want to hear about the business side, or don't want to hear about collaborating or working with managers or how to think through work. I'm not here to say you should, but there's certain things that have been epiphanies in getting success in what I do, and helping take it where I wanted to go. And advice. Everybody wants to give you advice, so I wouldn't know if I would be able to react and do what they did. As a friend, I said most of that, but we're typically self-made. How many of us have said that we started working right after high school, working in .coms, working our way up through whatever it is. And we're often a product of our environment, worn out, beat out, are always the BOSH. Some of us are, DevOps, that's our last stand. And a lot of us have the problem where, management manages expectations, and that's kind of where we're set at, and we don't really challenge that. And then, repeating here, easy to burn out, got excuses for everything, and we just want to automate it. Don't make me think about the work. But you guys are here, we're at DevOps days, other meetings, because we got cool things that we want to do work with. We want to solve business goals, from lean, philosophy, DevOps, systems thinking, whatever it is, that you see something that you can bring to the organization, and that's why we show up to cool things like this. But the hard way, I did this slide at DevOps Days Austin, and I just showed him as being like the logical guy, questioning why you're not following his logic. But someone had tweeted something like, if you're a Spock and you don't have a Captain Kirk, then you're screwed. And that kind of resonated with me from other places where I've been at, where there's things to me that just made sense that they wouldn't do, and it just made me angry. And I wanted to close the deal, get pissed off, just get the work done. And it was kind of an interesting way to, if your management can't respect who you are, and if that's the way you are, and you're not bothered with the business stuff, then it's going to be hard to do public. Hard to do automation, configuration management, all that stuff. The organization just isn't set up to allow you to achieve that. You come in with strongly stated positions. My way or the highway, let's do this, I've done this before. You're kind of using your experience and what you've heard, and maybe not running through iterative environments, not doing experimentation, not doing pilots, but you're coming in and trying to solve problems that you see problems. You come in with assertive support and arguments, hey, this is what Google does, we should do it, let's call everybody SREs, that's going to fix our problems. Obey our logic, we're experienced, and everybody's running a puppet, that's the way we got to do it, it'll work. Close the deal, hey, I've been here 5 years, I'm the only one that knows how to fix this stuff, listen to me. This isn't, you might be working with your peers, but this isn't part of collaboration. And that's what I had to stop, and other people I won't speak for, but I know other people I wish that, they could stop too. But the new way, collaborative way, it's not just working together, not just breaking down silos or building bridges. The silo issue is huge in the IT circles, and especially some of the DevOps people talking. In a corporate environment, enterprise environment, you're going to have silos. That's not your target. You got people in 25 different countries and languages and cultures. There's going to be silos, and sometimes the best thing to do is to, in a collaborative way, recognize those silos and bring them in and value their differences. Versus trying to flatten it out and say, we're doing this because silos are bad. One thing that established credibility is, don't overestimate oneself. Don't jump into conclusions, don't jump into applying. Don't just install Puppet and start running away with it. People will think you're trying to circumvent them. There's all sorts of things where people challenge you on your credibility. And frame for common ground. This is something that politicians will speak of and they use to pull your shoestrings to get you to vote for them. But you can also use it just to be kind of empathetic towards people. Lead to positive results, make it yours, take ownership of things. If you see work that needs to get done, you work with the person who's kind of sponsoring it, which is pretty typical in an enterprise environment, and you make them feel part of your team regardless of them not being in your team. Most of the 25 people that I report to and work with day in and day out are business analysts. I'm working with the Oracle financial stuff, and they don't care about the technology on the backside, but if I can translate what that technology has done to something that they can understand, that's been the most important thing ever, and that's just framing for common ground so that everybody knows you're working towards a common goal. Connecting emotionally, that's the same thing with framing common ground. Make them feel part of your team. Strategize to reach a broader audience. The last thing you want to do is just become more closed, my way or the highway. We automated it, don't want to touch it, don't touch it, stay out. There's a whole lot of things we do that are reactionary and that don't fit what collaboration is about and what I consider as configuration management is about. And most importantly, whatever you do, base it on evidence. I can't say this enough that have pilots, have things test, do validations, get your customers in working with you to validate things. Don't just assume that it worked, that you didn't get any errors, that you can push that to production. The last thing you want to do is automate your failures into production. You want people to automate their successes, and you want people to respect that you have the evidence to fix failures. Failure is inevitable, and there's a saying that's been going around that you want things to be safe to fail. And this isn't safe to fail where you just accept downtime as a normal thing. It's safe to fail where the business knows that you have the tools, the process, the mindset, that you can take complicated, and simple things and apply your configuration management to it to solve them. So that when things do break, they respect you to fix it more than to question why it broke, which is kind of an interesting transition to be in. And I also want you, when you virtualize things, you run like a foreman, you can provision things real quick, and throw them out in public and test things. It gives you a little more flexibility to stay ahead of the business too, so you can set up your own environments to practice things. You can use, there's zillions of tools. You can publish to a Hyper-V on your local workstation or Oracle's virtualized tools or VMware. Kick things off to the cloud. A lot of times Azure and Amazon have free services you can use. So if you want to test things and you're not messing around with corporate data, it's good to use this, science basically. Use stories. I find stories is how you can talk to non-technical people and bring them on board. And a lot of us are bad at telling positive stories. Examples sometimes just go over people's heads, but if you can connect those examples and frame them the right way, or use metaphors if they're too complex. You often hear manufacturing metaphors for how you need to work on things and send it through your different work cells and get it through to production. So metaphors is a great way to get things done. And as your transformation, if you're a tech dude and that's all you want to be, that's fine. But if you want to implement Puppet, configuration management, and these tools to actually get things done, you don't have to wait until you get the promotion to be management. You don't have to be the dude that has leadership or some kind of title or director or any of that. If you take your collaborative leadership skills up, people will just grab onto you, and there's a trust and relationship that's built regardless of your title. I found that to be much more rewarding than getting promoted to a manager where doing timesheets and expense reports all day. It's not my thing. But I wanted to be someone, or show that I could be someone that could lead complex and complicated systems through automation tools and get things done. So this was a great way for me to do that. And lastly here, it's just patterns, not ideologies. This isn't stuff that you go and say is sacred or anything like that. It's all about continuous improvement, continuous learning, taking ownership, and creative thinking. It's weird that a 4-quadrant diagram can give you some insight on what you're trying to work on, but unless you're doing this, oftentimes your post-haste issues, you're trying to figure this out and not even knowing it. What went wrong, what was broken, why did we do this, or why didn't this manager do that? That's a lot of stuff that is a lot easier if you do it in the head and if you get people thinking about it. As part of your work, it helps greatly. And this is the last one here. I just stole the guy posted on Twitter. So if you're comfortable being the Brent spot, don't want to do anything, make sure your boss and the captain in charge that can respect that. Make sure that he knows that he can do the translation. He can help you, steer you, translate. Because in the corporate environment, they're really bringing IT into the forefront of these companies now. And if IT isn't critical to the business success, then they're going to outsource it anyway. That's kind of just the industry standard, and that's pretty much sums up my thing. And I found that implementing Puppet was the easy thing. The technology wasn't that hard. We do it on VMware and Dell hardware. We've got like 10 physical hosts and about 60 VMs per physical host, so pretty high density. Most of the Oracle stuff is segregated on its own because of licensing reasons on the CPU core licensing, and then you have to license your whole physical host, even if it's virtual. So there's things like that the business have problems managing that is easy to do in Puppet, because we can just have the auditors look at what is on those hosts, the factor, look at what's reporting in the database and things like that. So it's been a good tool, even if you don't use it, to go hog wild and automate your entire business. So I recommend start small and work your way up, and don't jump into the grand scheme of things of trying to accomplish everything out the door, or else it's just impossible to go back and finish the easy stuff. Any questions, comments?